Welcome to the Blind Loyalty Challenge. I am Amanda Cromhope from Truth Loyalty and the Blind Loyalty Trust. We interview world leaders in loyalty blindly. The challenge is about creating loyalty insight spontaneously and about a lot of fun. Simultaneously, it is about raising the awareness of the Blind Loyalty Trust, and 100% of the proceeds from my book, Blind Loyalty 101 Loyalty Concepts Radically Simplified, go towards the trust. We hope you enjoy the Blind Loyalty Challenge. So it's not every day that I get someone who I'm so desperate to chat to come onto the Blind Loyalty Challenge, but Len and I are friends. We're co-partners at the Customer Strategy Network. But Len Llaguno, he needs no introduction to the world of loyalty. He is the founder and managing partner of Kairos, and he told me a nice story about the brand name. But Len, I know a million people who will want to listen to today, so thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for inviting me on. So excited to have some fun here, and a bit anxious about the questions you're going to ask, but let's just roll with it. We're going to have a great time.
Listen, if you're anxious, you can imagine other people are very anxious. So Len, tell us a little bit before we get going about your company's name.
Yeah, so Kairos is actually the Greek god of opportunity. So that's where I got the name from. When I was coming up with the name of the book, I had just finished reading the book called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike.
I love it. I've read
Nike,
that.
Of course, is the Greek goddess of victory, and so I said, maybe I'll go down that theme, and I found Kairos, and it was a great fit.
In fact, my dog used to be called Nike because she was a goddess.
Nice. I like that.
Okay, let's focus. My first question is set by Mark Bergdahl. And Mark's question is, why is bank-wide loyalty so difficult?
Just getting the entire a loyalty program across the entire organization.
And getting the organization to support the sort of behavioral change required to make the whole bank successful, not just a credit card swipe.
Yeah, well, I think the answer really is change management, right? Banks are enormous, complex organizations that sort of have been running a certain way for a very, very long time, right? And so trying to drive that scale of a change across such a large and complex organization is like never going to be easy. You compound that with the fact that quantifying ROI is like such a difficult thing. It is very hard to get people to buy into it, especially if a lot of your folks that you're trying to sell into doing this are have deep training in finance. They're immediately going to be skeptical around anything to do with ROI with a loyalty program, right? Yeah. We've all experienced that. We've worked in the industry long enough. There's always somebody in finance that thinks loyalty is a cost center and not a value driver, right? So imagine trying to sell into this gigantic organization, a bank full of finance people, and say, let's do this loyalty program. No, it's got a really great ROI. It's going to drive value for the organization. And then they're going to say, all right, prove it to me, right? And then that's where things get very, very difficult, right? Yeah. So you've got so many things just stacked up against you to really make it work. I think it can work. I think loyalty programs do generate a tremendous amount of value. But I think they're measured largely by the wrong things. And I think they don't really have the tools to really prove ROI in the way that we need to, right? But if you can cross that bridge, then I think that there's a lot of value to be created.
Amazing. Absolutely. I love the answer. Thank you. And in fact, in the South African market, I think we have probably one of the most sophisticated reward structures around banking, where the banks here really are achieving bank-wide loyalty. EPAPS has been heralded the best financial services program globally, loyalty program or rewards program, and not just so in financial services, but then in the world for being the best loyalty program. So it's that, and they're achieving that through bank-wide loyalty, which is just great. And obviously there's other banks here as well.
Well, yeah, we have our friend Neba over at African Bank doing amazing things as well, right?
Exactly.
So it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible, but it's also definitely not easy, right? So Great question. I love the question.
Well, that's Mark. Actually, Mark set that for you, so I won't take any
Thank you,
credibility on
Mark.
that one. Any credit. Anyway, question two. In chapter 95 of Blind Loyalty, you were a contributor, and I was very grateful
Mhm.
for you being a contributor. There was no one else I would have asked. The question, the chapter title is Program Liability, Friend
Mhm.
or Foe?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not a foe, but I think most people think it is, right? Um, you know, a lot of companies do not spend a lot of time on liability management. And I get it. It's literally the most boring part of a loyalty program is thinking about breakage and liability and accounting entries and all that. It's not super fun, but it is super critical, right? It's sort of the foundation of the underlying economics of the loyalty program, right? Like liability and redemption costs. It's often the single largest expense in the loyalty program business model, right? And oh, by the way, if you want to really understand ROI, redemption cost is literally the denominator in the ROI calculation, right? So like so many things really depend on a deep understanding of liability. And but it is what it is. A lot of companies just aren't really sort of deeply understanding it and trying to mitigate the risk associated with it. Um, but that doesn't mean it's a foe. It's
Yeah.
definitely it's just a part of the mix, right? It's just part of doing business. You have to, you have this liability and you got to manage it. And there's definitely risks associated with having this liability. The number one risk is basically just misestimating, right? Because you're issuing all these points today, they're not going to get redeemed for years into the future, right? But you need to actually understand the cost of those points you're issuing today in order to run your business, in order to make smart
Yeah.
business decisions today, right? So you have to estimate it. And time again, we've seen companies just do that so poorly, right? The worst case example was I was brought into, there was a transaction that occurred, and I was brought in to do a little bit of due diligence in this loyalty program. Very successful, highly regarded loyalty program, was doing it themselves internally for like a decade. I think somebody on their marketing team was coming up with the breakage estimates, had a spreadsheet they were producing. Spreadsheet was completely wrong. It produced a number. It was just the completely wrong number. When you looked at it from an actuarial perspective, you could clearly see absolutely the wrong number, right? And because this program was so successful, growing so fast and so big, their liability, the gap that they had accumulated over a decade of doing it wrong, was $100 million. Right?
No,
So can
goodness.
you imagine going to your boss and saying, "Hey, we did it
I'm
wrong for
out
a
by
decade.
100
Got to find
million.
100 million." Like that's the risk we're talking about because these programs and the volume of points you're issuing are so large. Even if you're just off on the breakage rate by a little bit, I mean that can drive millions and millions of dollars of volatility for the organization. So I don't think it's a foe though. I mean, because one of the things we always see is redemption is a key inflection point in the customer journey, right?
Yeah.
Which means when people redeem, their subsequent behavior is so much more profitable. They just keep coming back more and more and more and more and more. And you and I already know that just intuitively as loyalty people. That's just a truth
Yeah. Yeah.
that we
Excuse the
know,
pun.
right? Excuse me, fun, yeah. But a lot of other folks, particularly stakeholders in these organizations that aren't loyalty professionals, don't really know that, right? And so it's important that we as practitioners bring clarity.
I think on that last point, Len, actually, so if we listen to anyone who knows anything about like loyalty, the consumer psychology behind that feeling, that dopamine hit when there's a redemption and that change, positive change of behavior thereafter. So there's the consumer psychology side, and then there's the proven results side that you, particularly in your work, see time and time again, and you measure it, and we see it as well, but we're not doing the same kind of work. And trying to get both of those across to skeptics in an organization is a challenge I think all the
Mhm.
loyalty professionals face. But okay, my last question. I actually feel like I'm not doing the blind loyalty challenge any service in this interview because they're all too easy for you, but I actually want to hear what you're going to say. And you've touched on this.
Okay.
So chapter 94 is about the KPIs behind a loyalty program. And you've already said that so many organizations are measuring this incorrectly or measuring the wrong
Mhm.
thing. So, what is that one thing most organizations are measuring that is wrong? And what if you could only choose one KPI, would you encourage organizations to pick?
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is a difficult question if I only have to choose one. So I'll maybe start with why are companies measuring it wrong? Everybody has certain KPIs and they have their benefits, right? Things like membership growth, size of your active population, um, things like that are all well and good. But what's missing is how you translate that KPI into incremental value creation. Because that's what everybody's after here. The whole point of the loyalty program is to drive incremental behavior. And by that, I mean, we're trying to get people to do things they otherwise wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people try to get at that by, KPIs that look at member behavior versus non-member behavior. And that's actually like quite garbage, right? And the reason is the cohort of people that are in the program are just better customers than the cohort of people that choose not to be in the program. It's called self-selection, right? So they're naturally better. The loyalty program, when you compare the members versus non-members, the loyalty program didn't necessarily make the members better, right? They were just naturally already better. So the loyalty program certainly does make the members better, drives incrementality, but comparing it to the non-members is a bit of an overstatement, right? So by and large, what we're missing is KPIs that can measure some concrete behavior, but then also translate that into incremental value creation. Something like, you have a KPI where if 100 basis points increase in this KPI drives $40 million of incremental profits. We want to be able to say something as simple as that. And then, of course, back it up with the data-driven storytelling to show that's an accurate statement, right? And so that's what I think is missing, that tie between the KPI and the value creation, right? And so that applies largely to all the KPIs that most loyalty programs are using. The KPI that I would choose, honestly, it's hard to choose one because
I know, that's what I'm asking you.
I know, right? Yeah, probably. The best practice is you need to have a sort of portfolio of these KPIs that each one of them is a concrete behavior you can measure that then ties to long-term value creation. And that's sort of how you could tell a really complete story. If I had to choose one, though, I would go with something like first redemption within 12 months of joining, right? The percentage of customers that have their first redemption within 12 months of joining, because one of the key messages we always have to talk about is the value of redemption, right? Because too many people think redemption is a cost center loyalty is a cost center rather than a value creator. If you can show the percentage of customers redeeming within the first 12 months is increasing, and you could show that with every 100 basis point increase in that metric, you're creating however many millions of long-term value, you've got a compelling story to tell.
Fabulous. I got you to get the one, but I love it. And we had to make you squirm a little bit there, Len. So there you go. You cruised through your 3 questions, and I know people who are interested in our industry will be dying to listen to this. So thank you. Who would you like us to interview on the Blind Loyalty Challenge?
So it's a good question. There's so many great people. I was just chatting the other day. So you just got a text message from a friend of mine. His name's Marlon Chan. He used to run the loyalty program over at Expedia. He I think would be a great guest because he actually started in finance and then worked his way into actually running the entirety of the loyalty program. And they've gone through so many evolutions, such a really complex and global loyalty programs with point of sales in countries everywhere, with different programs between Expedia Rewards, Hotels.com, Orbitz, Vrbo's now in the mix, the One Key program. I mean, he's seen so many things. I think he'd be a really great person to have on the show.
Great. Thank you. And a question, not necessarily for Marlon, but for another guest. You can make it super hard so I'm not the baddie.
This
I'm being really
tough.
unfair. I'm being super unfair because if you make it hard, it might be impossible to answer.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I would say, well, this is actually a question I want to know. So maybe I'll ask this. Why is it that loyalty programs don't invest in de-risking points liabilities?
I don't know who's going to answer that. Don't invest in de-risking points liabilities.
And you can't ask Marlon that one, I guess, because he was a client and they definitely did. And that's definitely best practice. But maybe that's a good question for some other folks. 'Cause I'm
Yeah,
genuinely curious because if you have a huge loyalty program, I mean, and you're not investing it, and you could be in the situation of the story I told earlier where you're doing it wrong for a
yeah,
decade, right?
yeah.
Um,
That's a beauty. That's a beauty. I'll have to really think who I can ask that to. Len, I knew it would be amazing. It's a bit longer than we normally have, but I'm definitely looking forward to sharing this with the world. So thank you for doing
cool.
the Mind Loyalty Challenge.
Thanks, Brenda. Great to be here. Thank you.